Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Albers, and welcome back here to the Positive Energy Podcast. Positive stories about positive people. And Steve, I tell you what, this guy Shane Reinert, who we have here today, is a guy that's going to bring up some really positive things that he's doing throughout the community, and he's been doing it for a long time. But I've known Shane for a while, and obviously your brother does, because we were doing Anderson High School football, and he was our main man because he took care of us.
That's right.
Probably way back in the day when we had VHS tapes and we were doing it that. I think he was involved in that. But so it's going to be great talking to him and just getting up what he's doing. And you're going to love what he's doing.
Well, I want to get into it, but the early years success that you and Greg had has a lot to do with this guy.
Absolutely.
And I want to go back because a lot of people, it's been a few years now, Shane had said, Anderson Community Television is gone.
Right.
And I mean, quite frankly, in the 90s, that was a pretty big thing.
It was huge.
So I want to get into that. I want to hear Shane tell some stories about you and Greg and how hard that was to produce those.
It's going to be bad. So as we said, joining us is Shane Reinert. Shane, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This is going to be great to catch up. So obviously, you and I have been around for a long time. Steve hasn't, but your brother. Let's kind of talk about how we got together and how we met each other at ACT, and just kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think we met each other in the fall of 2006. I had started there when Anderson and Union Township had split, so there was an access center that went to Union Township where Justin Hawthorne still works.
Justin,
to this day, and I came in and filled his shoes there with Andy Crozier, and we had a few other people there. We were, we were located back there kind of by Chick-fil-A where Minuteman Press.
I was just getting ready to say, that's the first one.
We had the office at one end, and then we had the studio at the other end, and it was a great experience to be there and to obviously there's a huge amount of passion about the football program here. And everybody was always calling, hey, when is it going to be on? When's this happening?
Is that right? Wow.
All the time.
Yeah, I think the thing that was, we just talked about that with the VHS tapes is these guys would do an unbelievable job, Steve, of our games would end at 10:30, sometimes 11 o'clock. We'd run them down to the station. Those guys would get it on air that night to be aired at 11:30.
And that was the big thing, and that's why it was so popular. And then you do the replays, like once a night, for the next week or whatever. But I mean, it was such a popular thing.
Yeah.
And how cool was it, to play your game and then go get a bunch of pizzas and watch the game at 11:30.
Everybody said that, and like you said, everybody's calling, when's the game on?
Yeah.
But not only that, Shane also helped out with, we did some UC Claremont basketball games.
Okay.
We did, we did some other Anderson basketball games, some Anderson stuff.
Okay.
So he did a lot of the sports stuff for me. And he Shane, am I right or wrong on this, but a lot of times we did that Redskin review show, and you were my producer. Basically, you were in there working the board for me.
I've been there hitting all the board, making sure we got all the audio and everything, make sure we got the lights nice and everything. Make sure everybody's mic'd up really well, and obviously very, very popular show.
Absolutely.
So how did all that start? What was your journey to get to ACT?
I started bringing programming over to ACTV. It was AUCTV at that time.
Okay.
From what was Love and Faith Fellowship over on Hopper Hill. Now it's Solid Rock South.
Yeah.
So they had a guy who was in charge of all that who worked at Channel 9. So I got my hands on all of this equipment pretty quick. And I said, hey, can I direct? Can I do this? Can I do that? And I would bring that stuff over. I'd talk with the guys. If they needed a little help here or there, I'd volunteer. I think the desk that they had in there and some of the stuff I stained and I painted.
Really?
I wasn't very good at it, but I did it. And that kind of got my foot in the door there. And then I had gone to, it was Ohio Center for Broadcasting back then.
So did I.
Now it's Ohio Media School.
Okay.
And I graduated from there. I ended up at Waycross Community Media out in Forest Park. I was there for about 3 or 4 months. And I believe that the position that I had, they didn't need it. So after that time, I left there, and I'm thinking, well, not much is happening. I don't know if I'm going to work in the field again.
Yeah.
And I'm out mowing, and Andy Crozier gives me a call, and he says, hey, would you apply for this? And I'm like, are you sure? What's going on? And he tells me, and I'm like, let me think about it. And I came in and applied, and there were a couple other people in the running, and they brought me in, and that's how I got there.
God, that is crazy.
Wow. So you had gone to school first for that?
Yeah. I mean, I thought I didn't know as much as I knew. So when I leave bringing the programming over from the church and everything, and I'm like, all right, I got so much to learn and everything, and I get to the school and they have me teaching their editing class, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I didn't think I knew anything. I thought you guys are gonna be teaching me. And they're like, no, you got it. You got it. So I was like, okay. So I get over to ACTV, and equipment's changing, funding's changing, a lot of things are up in the air. And that first summer, really, it was amazing. Andy and I had gotten together and said, hey, we're going to work on this project. And we didn't know each other really well. I mean, I knew a little bit about him, but we started putting together some things, and we formed a partnership of our own, a business of our own outside of there at the same time.
Okay. Well, that's what I was going to ask is, I mean, obviously from our perspective it was the football thing, but I'm sure there were a lot of other things that you guys were able to produce and put on there.
Yeah, I mean, when I walked in the door, I just felt like this is limitless. And I think Andy had been so used to it. He was like, it's no big deal. And I'm like, no. There's a chance for people to really see our stuff. There's something really cool here. And we connected with the Claremont County historian, Rick Crawford. He passed away a few years back. And Rick was really well known all over for telling all these histories and ghost stories and stuff. And we're like, you think we can get him to do something with us? And it was probably September. We released a DVD on ghost stories in Claremont County.
Wow. We
got them in the Borders books. We sold 10,000 copies of those. We weren't ready for that at all. We had no idea, because we're like,
holy cow.
We were burning the DVDs, and then back then we were putting these labels on like the first 100 or so. We're making all these ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
We're getting them printed. The inserts that go into the DVD covers are getting printed over staples, and we're having to cut the edges off and everything. And we thought we might get a few. They had never taken anything like that on at Borders in Eastgate, and they've got like locally produced books and stuff like that. And we're like, so we drop off the first set, and they said, hey, we got to pay you like in 90 days. And we're like, well, okay. We find out there's a waiting list of 40 people already purchased before we even dropped off the second load. And we're like, you've got to be kidding. We've got something here.
Wow,
we really do. And then Rick was, he's in the Ohio Sports Writers Hall of Fame. He also worked for the Claremont Sun at the time.
Okay.
So he was able to get a story written pretty quick, and people were coming in with the article in hand.
Wow.
Where can I get these?
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of just winged that too. It wasn't like it was super polished. We're just following him around to these places and getting what we can out of him. And we had no idea what we were getting into.
Still, people ask for copies, or?
I had somebody come from Northern Kentucky in March and buy a copy from me.
Really?
And I only have 2 copies left.
Wow.
And we were just like, are you serious? This is a standard definition DVD,
Wow.
That's incredible.
And he's like, I gotta have it. I saw it when I was a kid, and I was like, are you serious?
That is crazy.
Yeah, so we really enjoyed our time there. Rick wasn't healthy enough to do a second one, so we tried to do a second one, and we thought, we got this, right? We've already shown we can do this. And the second one, we print the first 100 of our own. They go over to Borders. It takes them 4 months to sell. And we're like, okay, all right. So then we had to hire a different host. This guy wasn't really well known, and that one bombed.
Okay.
We went all over the place getting these stories, and then like a year later, Andy's at home and he's watching the Today Show and they're doing a haunted hotel segment. And he said, "You're not going to believe this.
It's yours.
It's our stuff."
No.
Don't they have to ask you permission for that?
Well, so he recorded as proof. So he brings it in and we're like, okay, cool. And so we're like, they didn't mention us. The hotel had given them permission to share part of the stuff in this. And there was a guy who was, I guess, like a haunted hotel expert or whatever. So he was showing our stuff and talking about it. And so we called up their legal department and we call them up and it's, they're like, "Hey, we got a problem." We're like, "All we want you to do is just tell people where they can get it." And they say to themselves, they say, "Well, if you want to do that, we can sue the hotel." And we're like, "We can't do that. We just made this partnership with this hotel. We can't. Yeah. We just wanted them to tell people where they could get it because that was the best exposure we ever could show.
Right. Yeah.
So that's just like blew us away. So we were really disappointed. So eventually there was an agreement where I would appear on like the top 2 morning shows. One was in Dayton on the radio and one was in Columbus. It didn't amount to anything for us, but we at least got something out of it at the end.
Oh man, imagine if that would have.
I know.
We kept thinking, we're like, all right, this is our ticket out.
Yeah.
We made it,
Wow.
This is it.
That is crazy.
And so that was pretty wild. And when the second one bombed, we kind of just, all right, we're just going to settle in here. We're going to stay at ACTV and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, you guys did a couple. I know Toastmasters was another one that you guys did for a while. You've had some other shows on there for a while, but I was with you during the busy, crazy times, but then I was also with you when things kind of started petering out. It was getting talk about how hard it was for me I was so close to you guys and then having our games there and all that stuff, and it was just great for the community and everything. Talk about how hard that whole, because we tried everything we could to keep that thing afloat. We just couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. It was hard. We had some leadership when I first got there that she was not there a lot. She's passed away, so I'm not going to mention her name or anything, but she was just not there a lot, and the communication between the township and everything wasn't very good. And there was basically 3 of us showing up all the time, and there were supposed to be 5 of us there. And we knew that the dynamic had changed. The way we were getting funding is when they set up access stations, they had every community who wanted Time Warner or whoever it was, Spectrum, Coax, they would have to have that permission to come in the community, and they would have to give them an access station. So that money was contingent on having the access station. It was supposed to go to help them fund.
Okay.
And at some point, the legislation changed, and we weren't sure what was going to happen. And then we got somebody else in charge, and he kind of let it slip out, well, you guys don't get that money without us. And they did some digging and found out they didn't need us anymore. So that was a problem for us. And the person who was in charge, he got cancer and he passed away. So we were kind of rudderless at that point. It was like, what can we do to keep this going? The funding they were starting to send us was way smaller than probably 1 or 2 people's salaries, and we had to work off of whatever the board had saved up. We weren't in the employees weren't really in the loop on how much was there or wasn't there.
Right.
Wow.
So instead of doing like a 5-year deal to keep the station around, it started becoming year by year.
Yeah.
And eventually they let everybody go but me, and that was hard. That was hard.
Sure.
The other 2 people who were there with me were some of my best friends. I was closer to them than I was to my family for a bit. They saw my older son grow up, and he would come in there and he would help me. Way back when we had 26 VCRs, I'd lift him up and he's putting all the tapes in and everything.
Oh, wow.
Is that Antoine?
Anton, yeah.
Anton, yeah.
Wow.
So he would do that, and I think he had a career day, and he said, one day I want to work at ACTV, and I was so sad that he wasn't going to be able to experience that. So when it just became me, we had a different board, a very small board, and it was like, okay, what can we do? I kept thinking of how could I get press? How could I make the township happy? How could I get attention? And it was hard. I mean, I cranked out more stuff during those years than any of the years I'd been there previous. We did everything we could. And in the end, they decided it wasn't a good use of the taxpayers' money.
Right.
In today's day and age, I mean, you would think whether it be the trustees meeting or a school board meeting or anything that we relate to the public, rather than having to go there, it's easy access. You can be able to watch it, and I mean, I know some of that stuff was on there, and it
was the big Redskin debate
was on there.
Huge thing.
Okay.
That was on there. I remember that being on there. All that. Anytime there was a school board meeting, it was on there.
Yeah.
Government meetings, it was on there. I mean, so they had so much stuff that now they just put it on YouTube.
It's a lot different than it was. I mean, media's changed a lot. I mean, we don't see the small papers and the community journals anymore. I mean, between the two, you had access to everything there in a way that you won't get anymore.
Wow.
You had Gannett come in and they purchased the Inquirer, then they purchased the small community journals, and before you knew it, everything was going away. It's a matter of, okay, how profitable is this?
Yeah.
And it's definitely missed. I mean, I have people who tell me all the time, oh wow, we used to watch this all the time. We would watch the trustee shows. There was a zoning issue about a mining operation in close to Newtown.
Yeah,
and I can remember some of those meetings. I'm in a chair for 8 hours.
Oh my gosh.
They were going that long. Yeah. And that was the best way for everybody to get all the details. I can remember community press members coming to us and saying, hey, we didn't have anybody available to get to the meeting. Can we get that from you?
Yeah.
And the way that worked, it was an amazing resource for so long, but media has changed so much. A lot of the access stations have gone away in Ohio. In Kentucky, they've managed to fight it off pretty well, but they have apps, they have streaming, they have all that stuff, and we weren't going to be able to make that happen.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, so let's do a little shift here before we get into the main reason you're here. But so you had shifted from doing this at the cable station to becoming a pastor, I believe.
I became a pastor 2 years after I left there.
Okay.
Left there, and it's funny. I found a job right away at a large ministry on the west side of town, and as soon as I got there, as soon as ACTV closed, my wife lost her job that she had had for 14 years. So we both meant those jobs forever, and that's the only job she'd ever had.
Oh my goodness.
So we're kind of stressing out. Don't know what we're going to do. I felt like God was telling me it was time to leave that new job, and I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? I was like, we don't have any money coming in. We cleared out the retirements, got 2 kids, and it's funny, I ended up I started delivering for Domino's, which is why I went to college, to get away from that. I was away from it for 20 years. And I said, here I am back now. And I felt like there was more to that. I mean, they were working me pretty hard. I still work for Domino's, a different location, but I just knew that there had to be more to this. And I'm like, all right, what can we do? What am I supposed to do? That year, we both lost our jobs. All our pets died.
Jeez, oh Pete.
All the appliances except for the refrigerator quit working.
Boy, you're being tested here.
Cars went, and we're just like, okay, what is going on? I mean, we were just shell-shocked. We weren't ready at all for this.
Yeah.
And so my wife didn't find full-time work until about a year ago. She was doing part-time work. They created a position for her at the Lord's Gym Ministries. She's in Price Hill in Covington. And it was just me working like 24/7 for like the last few years. I mean, I can say I've probably had less than 30 days off between being a pastor, doing the video stuff, and working at Domino's probably in the last 6 years.
Wow.
And I said, who would have thought in my 40s I'd be working more than I was, in my 20s or anything. And so we kind of had to find a new way. It's been tricky. not at all what we expected.
Right.
Had to find the new normal, and still get to use the video abilities, and then I was going to a church where there was a guy in Moscow. He was an older Marine, and he kind of was training people into the ministry. And he's like, you got to come down here. So the first time I went down there, it was a Wednesday night, and there were 3 people.
Okay. And
I go up there, and I go ahead and do it. There's only 3 of them. One of them says, that's exactly what I needed to hear. So I was really surprised, and life had been so hard, I'd forgotten that when I was like 24, I got invited to this church to come. We were going to shoot some sort of video there, and there was a guy there called Pastor Harry. He was in his 90s, and man, he got around like somebody in their 20s.
Really?
And he says, you want to know if you're open to do this? It's like, do what? I was like, he's like, to preach, to be a pastor.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, sure. And he grabs a hold of both of my wrists. He just closes his eyes, and he's praying real quietly, and it just feels like there's fire shooting through me. I'm thinking, if he doesn't let go of me, I'm going to burst into flames.
Okay.
I was like, I'd never had anything feel like that in my life, and I'm scared to death. I was like, I just need him to get done praying.
Right.
Yeah.
And he just slowly opens his eyes like, yeah, you're open. So, years later, I get started down at that church in Moscow. I'm one of 3 or 4 guys preaching. We're rotating in and out on Sundays. And, the church starts to shrink because after the tornadoes came down through there in Moscow, almost everybody's gone.
Right.
Nobody had insurance. And he had the only church that had power during that time, and they were feeding all these people, but everybody left.
Oh.
So it got down to just a few people, and my wife is like, hey, you said you'd go to my church once we got married, so now we're married. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to go there. And Nikki, who used to work at ACTV, her dad founded this church in Newport.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm over there just kind of messing with the slides and the audio. And I get a call probably a year after being there, and it's the guy who ran that church. And he says, hey, there's a small church in New Richmond looking for somebody. And I told him, you're the one. He's like, they want me, but his wife had Alzheimer's. She was really bad off. She eventually passed away. And so I took the call from her, and the pastor that they had wasn't ready to leave. So I didn't think I'd hear anything again. A year later, I hear, so we'll give you a shot. And I'm telling them all the reasons why I shouldn't be. I was like, I'm a mess. My life is this way, that way. And they're like, well, we'll give you about 6 months to try you out. And so I get there, and I have no idea. I mean, it's this beautiful church built before the Civil War.
I was going to say, you said it was like 200 years old.
Is that right?
Gorgeous. I mean, all the sanctuaries, all the original tin. It's all white. The ceiling. I said, if it wasn't for that, they got to turn me all the way up when I speak because I don't have a big voice. Yeah. And I said, if it wasn't for all that tin, you guys couldn't even hear me. So I go through, and after a little while, I start teaching on the Book of Revelation. They did make a decision early that they're gonna hire me on as their pastor. So it was pretty amazing. I mean, it was very encouraging because I needed that encouragement because I was just like, everything went wrong for so long. Yeah. And it's like, now this door's opened up, and I was really excited.
No, that's a great story, man. Yeah. I mean, just with all the stuff that you went through, and then to have that happen to you, I mean, that's crazy. People don't think that they have a tough time talking about religion, right? Yeah. They don't believe, and a lot of people don't believe in that. They don't believe that God put you in that position or what, and that's a pretty amazing story to hear.
Yeah, I felt like, man, we went through the fire, and I was like, I didn't give up. I was like, but I didn't feel all that happy. Yeah, as we're going through it, I'm just like, wow. I think what I kept thinking is like, what did we do wrong? And that was just my thought for like 2 years, almost every night.
Well, don't you think that's a normal thing? Yeah.
And I just felt horrible. I felt like I let my family down because now I'm never home. They don't get to see me, and I'd always been there for everything before that. And I'm just like, man, how did my life turn into this big of a mess? I was like, I still believe that you're there. Yeah. And I was like, but I don't know what you're doing. Yeah. Yeah.
God. Well, as we've said about many things, you don't realize, you go through all that just to get to a better place.
Absolutely.
You know,
and you have. I mean, and you're still going strong. And then to have you come to my house several times to deliver pizza is even better.
It was humbling because I would see people that would come in the station. They're like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry that this happened to you." And I'm like, I'm making better money than I was. I'm working a lot. And I said, but all our needs got met. I remember sitting on the couch one day, and I was freaking out. I'm like, I don't know how we're going to cover this. We had to get a new furnace at one point, and we didn't have the money. And somebody gave us the money for that furnace.
Wow.
We didn't even ask them. They came and gave that. And I was like, all right. So I'm sitting on the couch, and I'm praying, and the couch is against the wall. There's no way anybody's behind me. And I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? We don't have any money. I'm working hard, and everybody's freaking out, and I'm trying to be the strong one. And I just heard, you have to trust me. And it was like, I could feel breath on my ear when it happened, so much so that I spun around, and of course nobody's there. And I'd never had any experience like that.
Wow. I've always, I still to this day, like I'll say, I want to experience that. You know what I mean? Like to do like he did, and because I hear a lot of people when I even go to Crossroads and I hear stories about that. Yeah. I don't think I've ever experienced it. And for you to experience that right off the bat, I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
And he's spoken to me so many other times, and just, you got to trust me. You got to trust me because, I was raised like, look, you get yourself in a hole, you got to dig out. I don't care how hard you got to work. And no matter how much I was working, we weren't getting anywhere. And I'm like, what is going on? I was like, I can't work any harder.
Wow.
And it was extremely challenging. Like they kid me at the church. They're like, "Oh, every time you pray, you get all your prayers answered." It's like, some of these took 20 years or so to get them answered. Like 2 years ago, when I was 20, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease is like your cells are supposed to protect your intestines, attack it instead, so they're eating holes and stuff. And I was really sick. I got down to 138 pounds.
Oh man!
I mean, you see those late night things where they got the kids in Africa and you could see every bone. Right. I could see everything in here. I didn't even know there were so many bones all through here.
My goodness.
And I couldn't eat anything. I was always sick, and I was afraid to eat anything. And then you get swollen. I was like swollen out to here because there was so much inflammation in my intestines. And the guy who diagnosed me, he's got the picture. He's like, this is where it is in your body. My dad was there with me, and I'm like, there's no cure. And they're like, so they're trying to give me this anti-inflammatory medicine, and it's not helping me. If anything, it's making me feel worse. And I quit taking it. And I'm just like, I got to deal with this. I got to manage my stress. I got to do that. And 2 years ago, I got really sick. I was so run down that they had to take me by ambulance down to Anderson Mercy. And they just started filling me with fluids. I was so exhausted. I was not resting. I wasn't taking care of myself. And they're like, you really need to have another colonoscopy done. You need to see how bad it is. They said the best guy in the whole country is Dr. Lamb, and it's right there behind the McDonald's there by there in Anderson. And so I go in there, and he's like, well, we'll go see what it's like. And I can remember being super nervous. I get in there. And they're counting me down, and I just remember, like, I was out and then I was awake in another room, and somebody said, hey, you gotta get dressed and leave. And I'm they didn't even do it, because that's how you feel when you come out.
The same way. Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm waiting. And I'm like, he's not coming out. This is bad. This is real bad. I was like, he comes out and he's got, those gloves all the way up and all that stuff. And he's just pulling it off, and he's just got this dumbfounded look on his face. And I'm like, just tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
And he says, your intestines are 100% perfect. There's not a problem anywhere. And I couldn't believe it. For 20 years I prayed, 24 years I prayed for that. And I'm just like, no way. He's like, you just have some sensitivities to this type of food and that type of food. If you don't eat that, you're going to be fine.
That is crazy.
Wow, incredible.
So I told that one at the church. I think that might have helped me get hired too. Something like that happened in my life.
How much of a load was that off of for you?
Oh, man, it was incredible. I was like, all of a sudden, I didn't feel sick anymore. I could eat a meal. Like, I never ate till I was full.
And you gained some weight then too, right? Because you were 130.
I'm like 220 right now.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine you at 130.
It was scary. It was scary. I mean, you just got all those bones and everything hurt all the time. And I just couldn't believe it. It's like, you're not, my wife picks me up and I was just like, you're not going to believe this.
Yeah.
And so then we sit down and I'm eating a big meal and everything. And I'm like, all right, let's get this in the body, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing good now.
That's amazing. And then the other thing that's amazing to me is what you did moving forward with the addiction series. So I want to get into that because I've watched some of them in the very, very beginning. The one that kind of stuck out to me, and I'm going to forget what his name is, but I think he was on Jackass or MTV or whatever.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that. But I want you to talk about what made you do the addiction series, and do you remember who your first guest was?
Oh, yeah, I can remember all that. So I'm sitting at my mom's, and I don't watch the news a lot, and my mom's watching, and I just keep seeing all these people are overdosing, they're dying, they're stealing from people, and I can remember growing up just being taught, like, stay away from those type of people, and I started thinking, I was like, does anybody really get better? I was like, because I never hear it. I never heard it once. And so I started praying about it. I was like, I think God wants me to do this. And I was engaged. I wasn't married to my wife yet. And she's like, I know somebody. I did a story on him. He lives in Kenton County, Kentucky. His name's John Hughes. And I think he'll do it. And I said, well, let's give it a shot. We'll see what happens. He comes in, and it takes me about 2 hours to make him comfortable. He's a very shy guy. And he finally sits down, and he's sitting there, and in the beginning, I'm angry, because he's telling me something. It's like, man, I took my mom's wedding ring and pawned it twice, and then I would act like I was helping her find it. And I'm like, man, why am I doing this? This guy's scuzzy, man.
Yeah. Right.
And by the end, he's crying. I'm trying not to cry because I'm like, this is going to ruin the whole thing. Everybody hears me crying.
Yeah.
And he finishes, and I was like, this is something powerful. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen with this, but, let's get it on the air. Let's get it on YouTube and see what happens. And, John from that video has had the opportunity to speak, I think in Chicago, all kinds of places.
Wow.
He's married. He's got 5 or 6 kids, a house. I mean, he really turned it around.
How about that?
And I was just like, okay, there's got to be more people out there like that. And then my wife, I think, found me the second one. And I did maybe 13 in the first year. And I thought, well, I'm probably done. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen with it. I don't know if the station's even going to be here. And people kept telling other people, you can trust this guy. Go in there and share your story. And kept doing that. And more people start coming out of the woodwork. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not done.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I was for sure. I covered a little bit of human trafficking, which ties a lot into addiction and everything.
Oh, my goodness.
And somebody comes in from Middletown. His name's Ron Ward. And he says, hey, we're having this guy out. His name's Brandon Novak. He's on Viva La Bam, Jackass. He's a pro skateboarder. And I knew what Viva La Bam was. I didn't know this guy. So I sat in there and I'm watching, I think Vice was doing something on Bam Margera trying to make a comeback. And he's being interviewed in that. And I was like, okay, now I know the face. And he's like, hey, we should be there. And I wait all day. And I don't hear a word. And I drive home. It's 45 minutes home. And I pull in the driveway and they say, we're on our way. So I come in the house, use the bathroom, tell him I got to go back. He's coming. So he walks through the double doors there, right by where, if you're in the Anderson Center, you come out of the elevator, and then there's those double doors right there.
Okay.
That was the entrance to the studio at that time. And he comes in, and he just says, where do you want me to look? And he proceeds to talk for hour and 1 minute, and just knocked it out of the park.
He had something to say.
And I was just like, okay, this is going to be
Well, don't you think
huge.
that particular one, because that's what I remember, that really amped it up even more for you?
Somebody wrote for the Cincinnati Enquirer story about that. Channel 5 also covered it, and they came down to the studio, interviewed me. That story that was on the front page of the Enquirer ended up on the front page of USA Today.
How about that?
And then it was like, all right, now we're rolling. And I didn't know him from anybody. He didn't know me. And I was just out at his place in the last year and a half out in Philly. And so, like, the power was out. It was in March. And it was just one of those cold winters we had. And I get a message, and I'm just sitting there in the dark with my phone because that's all you got to do.
Right.
Sure.
And it's on Instagram, and it's like his manager. And says, hey, he really wants to do something else again. He's been on Fox News. He's been on CNN. He's been on all these podcasts, but everybody knows him now from your video. Wow.
Yeah.
The video's got like 3.3 million views. The first
How
one.
about
crazy?
that?
I mean, every treatment facility probably in the United States and beyond is using that. I have everybody say that's the one that introduced me to all your videos.
Okay.
And what you're doing, and he's like, we got to do it.
Yeah.
So we're trying to connect. I was going to interview him out at a college in Ironton, Ohio, and the college said no way. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? And so fall comes, and he says, hey, can you make it to Philly? So we rent a car, me and Justin Hawthorne, when he came with me, and we get in, we drive out there, and the weather's just, it was a rough drive there. We get there, and we get to his place, and it's right down the street, like walking distance from where the Liberty Bell and all that stuff is. So that was really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So we go in there, and he's got this nice laid out place, and he says, hey, I got to make this quick. Like, what do you mean? He's like, I've opened in 5 sober living houses and I'm being audited. That's what happens the first year you've done this stuff. So he gives about 27 minutes that time.
Oh,
and
you drove 12 hours or whatever it is.
Yeah. We stayed for a day or two, and that's all we got.
Wow.
But, it was amazing. And he said, look, we're going to do this again. He's like, I guarantee it. So that was pretty cool to get that update that I wasn't sure was ever going to happen. The series has had ups and downs. Like during COVID, it was explosive.
Right.
It was unbelievable. I was getting probably 10,000 messages a month from people in recovery saying, you're saving my life. This helped me.
Oh my gosh.
This is what we're
That's
going.
incredible.
We can't have this meeting. We can't have that meeting. And I was just like, I was overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I had all these people. I had people travel from New York. I had people calling from Canada, from Nigeria. I had somebody from the UK, and they're all wanting to share their stories. People never met me before.
Wow.
And I said, the funny thing is God's got a great sense of humor, because I'm allergic to alcohol and I'm allergic to smoke. I've never done drugs. I don't even know what that feels like outside of them telling me. And I'm like, this is the guy who knew nothing. He became the expert? Are you serious?
Right.
Which is usually the case.
Yeah.
Not to compare or to stereotype, but you think of it like a social worker. A lot of social workers usually have experience in addiction or in some type of whatever it may be, and so they can relate to it. And here you are.
I became like somebody they could all trust and they could talk to. Like, we had to do the interview, and then we'd probably talk for 2 hours off there.
Well, I can certainly see that.
They were very comfortable sharing things. Like, I just shared stuff with you that nobody knows. None of my family, none of my friends, nothing. And they all trusted me. And it just blew me away. I had people saying, hey, I'm coming from Texas.
Yeah.
How can we do this interview?
Wow.
Or it's their money.
Yeah.
I can't afford to send anybody anything.
Yeah.
So I did like 34 the beginning of COVID. I did 34 that year, was the most I'd ever done. And, people just kept coming. kept coming, and if you can't get here, you can call.
Okay.
So during that time, I get a phone call. I put my number out there. Anybody in the world could call me. That was a little scary.
Like a hotline.
Oh, it made me very uncomfortable because I'm not that way.
Yeah.
So I get a phone call from Florida, and this man, I won't mention his name. He was a gold medal winning Olympic athlete who was an alcoholic. And he said, I'm staying at this hotel. My life is a mess. He's like, all these people wanted to hang out with me all the time, but now I don't have any money. Why is this happening to me? And I'm just like, oh, wow. So we just talked through some things, and I said, hey, if there's anything I can do to help you, he's like, I think I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, but thanks for talking to me.
Yeah.
And I started getting calls like that from all over the place.
So not only what you've done for those people, but then being a pastor too, to kind of help that a little bit too, as far as praying and doing all that stuff. I'm sure certainly helped a lot.
There's a guy, he's come out here at least 3 times from St. Charles, Missouri, and I saw him when he was just starting to get sober, and now he's working in ministry. I had a doctor out on the West Coast that was using my stuff. I had jails and prisons getting a hold of me saying, can we use this stuff? I said, just don't charge anybody to watch it.
Yeah.
I had a guy from Orange County, Florida get a hold of me and said, hey, I want all your videos. We're going to show them all on the Access Center here called Orange TV.
Okay.
It's just going to play 24/7.
Oh my gosh.
He sent me a hard drive, and there it is. And then I wasn't sure how you're going to fund all this, how you're going to keep it going. And when the TV station closed, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I didn't have any cameras or anything. And, all I did was pray about it, and somebody came through, and he gave me exactly what I needed. He said, here it is. God told me to give you this. And I was so surprised because this gentleman, he wouldn't want me to say his name because he's very humble, and everybody would probably know his name, but he was supportive all the way.
Wow.
And before I knew it, somebody's like, hey, you need to go here, you need to go there. I started going up to Dayton because they were the overdose capital of the world for a long time.
Dayton.
Really?
Dayton, Ohio.
Is that right?
So I would go up there, and they had some people up there say, hey, you got to talk to them. They've got men here that need help. And then other treatment facilities be like, okay, I've got people here.
Wow.
And I've been going out to Indiana for the last 2 or 3 years where they've got a women's home there where they're taking care of them.
Yeah.
And I get phone calls from different people, hey, I just want to share.
Yeah.
And everybody says, you've probably heard it all. And I every time I think I do.
Right. New story.
I mean, I had a guy call me earlier. This year I've done 45. My goal is 50. I've never done that many in a year.
You got it.
So I'm almost there. I had a guy who... he was a former professional wrestler, and he helped me try to do this other guy's story, and this guy ended up wanting to release it. Yeah. And he said, hey, I got this guy. He worked for the WWE. He was on television and everything. You want to share his story? He's in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So I'll go out there.
Sure.
So we had Ricardo Rodriguez, WWE wrestler, manager, and went out to his place. He's got a wrestling school now. Got to see that in action. We didn't even start interviewing him until like midnight that night. We'd been in the car all day to get there to do the interview. And, stuff like that just keeps happening every time I think I'm done.
So can I, real quick, not to interrupt you on that, but do you say, well, look, I need gas money, I need this, a hotel, or how does that all work?
I just, the money, I get donations here and there. Like there's a place I go up to in Dayton, Ohio called Good Shepherd Ministries. They're on either 3rd or 5th Street, and they've been giving me money. They talked me into, I had 1 year where only 3 people showed up. Out of 200 videos I've put out as of yesterday, I'd say there'd be about 1,000 if everybody showed up. So that year I only had 3, and I said, I'm done. I quit.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. And he's like, no, you got to keep doing it. This guy wouldn't leave me alone. We're going to give you money every time you come up here just to keep you going with gas or whatever you might need. And so that's kept me going. I mean, I'll probably never break even on the series, but it's not about making money.
But you do it it's not, I can't really compare it, but like for us, we broadcast it. A lot of times we don't get paid for stuff, and we do it because we love doing it, and we love the community. We love, just like you love what you're doing and reaching out and having people talk about their struggles. And I think that's what's key to it.
Well, you don't even know, Shane, the effect that you've had on people.
I'll never know the amount of people who have watched or anything. I've had people say, hey, we're using your place out in Arizona, using your stuff out in our place in Arizona, where we have high school kids that are inpatient treatment. They're watching this. I've had doctors tell me we're using it, jails, prisons. I had people in like Afghanistan, Iraq, and they said, we're not allowed to talk about this stuff here. This is the only way that we can even learn about and talk about all this stuff. And I wasn't ready for any of that at all.
That's incredible.
I had a guy maybe in December last year or the year before, and I don't recognize area code or anything, and I didn't answer, and so the guy calls back, and then it's somebody from Australia who's trying to get sober, and he just needs somebody to talk him through it. And we had that conversation for about 30 minutes, and he decides, I'm gonna quit my job. I'm gonna go in and get treatment tomorrow.
Oh, Shane, that's incredible.
And it just blows my mind, because I'm just like, are you serious? You know, how did you even know to call me? And they said, oh, it was on this video and
the number that you put out.
And so then I would get those calls, and it just blows my mind. I mean, I've had people, I had somebody call me. He had struggled with addiction. He got clean. He was a mechanic. Well, he's out in like North Dakota. And he goes out in the winter and he gets stuck in the snow. He found some of his old drugs in the car. He didn't even know were there. He uses them. So he gets out and he walks about 10 miles and like 10 below. Loses all of his fingers, all of his toes, and he's a mechanic now still. He can just grip just enough.
Wow.
And he's like, I had to share this with you. He sent me the pictures and everything.
No way.
So a lot of people are like, you're the only person I trust to put it out.
Shane, that's awesome.
Do you have like a title? I mean, does anybody call you like some type of a guru? Or,
No.
I mean, honestly, because there's got to be a reference for you. I mean, because
we need to come up with a name for him. Is what we need to do.
No, honestly, because
I agree.
At some point, somebody's got to write a major story that's going to be a movie about this guy.
I agree.
It's incredible, your story, Shane.
I mean, when you get into video and stuff, you hope that you're making an impact. You hope you get paid, but you know the impact is what you're looking to do. And you know, one of the goals I had is I would love to show some of these in a movie theater. And I got the opportunity 3 different times at the movie theater out in Bethel, the Midway. They're not operating anymore. So I got a hold of them and I said, hey, can I do this on a Sunday night? And I said, if anybody buys anything, you know, try to reimburse them a little bit or whatever. And we called it a night of hope. We did it 3 different times. 2 stories each time. And you know, we had most of the crowd was either people in recovery that knew me, or they had a child in recovery, or a child was still out there using. They said, man, I needed this because I felt like I was alone.
So I'm going to tell you something like this. So I go to Crossroads, and there's been so many times in my life that I'm going through crap, and I'm just not feeling. And when I go to Crossroads, something speaks to me. It's something dealing with what I want. So I can't even imagine being an addict or being that, and then seeing your thing to make them want to do what they do. So again, man, just hats off to you and you know everybody out there that's listening and watching this right now, man. Like if you're out there struggling and you have any problems or any issues, you know, find this addiction series. We'll talk at the very end of where you can find it, and you can also get a hold of Shane. You know, he's got his number and all that. But man, don't be afraid to, you know, reach out or talk to somebody, because it's very important to talk. You know, you have to talk about it.
You know, most of those people, they're extremely uncomfortable when they first walk in there. But by the time they leave, they're like, you really care. Like, you're really listening to me.
I love it.
I'm like, absolutely I am. I said, your story matters.
Yeah,
you can tell.
I said, you know, what you're telling me is really important, and you're going to help somebody. And one of the ways that came through in the last 2 years is I got contacted by the company that produces the series on A&E called 60 Days In.
Yeah.
We're big fans of your work.
Really?
We're looking for some people. Who do you suggest we contact?
Really?
So I gave him a few names and numbers, and one of our people was on 60 Days.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, well, the most recent season. And they said, who would have guessed? I said, all we're doing is sitting there and talking. You're not doing any crazy effects. There's no music. I mean, there was music on the first 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But after that, people were complaining, saying it was a distraction. So I was like, I just stripped it down as much as I could. It's somebody talking into a camera.
Yeah.
That's not anything super creative.
Like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And it works.
Wow.
You know, and I was like, look, there's no distractions. There's no reason for anybody to say, okay, I can't watch this or whatever. I was like, no, it's right there, straight to you, looking right at you, saying, you're not alone. I got through it. You can do it too.
That's incredible.
That is an unbelievable story, but I know that you've got other things going on too. You got one that's kind of piqued my interest that I want to talk about. Is you're doing the Americana. You remember that, Steve? Don't you?
Swordsville
Lake Americana. I remember. This is what I remember going as a little kid. Is my dad worked at Newtown and they used to have a day at Kings Island. Well, then Kings Island just got too expensive or whatever, so they all went out to Swordsville or whatever it was, and that was like a Kings Island.
Well, sure it was.
And it was really cool. And so he is doing a series and interviewing people that were either worked at the park or did something at the park, and he just started doing this.
No way.
And so talk a little bit about that real quick.
So this was prompted by somebody else did something that was nostalgic on one of the toy stores that were in the area. And my wife was a big fan of going to that. And she's like, it just doesn't feel right. They didn't tell the stories the way I want them to tell them and all that.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I'm just going to keep looking. There's got to be something out there that's like this. And I was like, I could remember going to Americana. I had a friend, his dad was a truck driver, and every year he got to take 2 friends to this, so I would usually go, and I'm like, I loved going there. And I'm like, that's the one. How has nobody done anything on this?
Yeah.
And so we get into this big Americana group, and I make a post, and my wife says, okay, we're going to do this together. We're really going to do this. I was like, yeah, let's do it. And put it in there, and nothing, I didn't see anything. I got no notifications on my phone. And I'm like, oh man, nobody wants to do this? And so I go into the group, and there's 67 responses that I didn't even know were there.
Oh, no.
Oh, really?
And there's people giving me photos. They're like, oh, I worked there. I was a lifeguard. I worked in the arcade. We get the guy who ran the Screeching Eagle, and he's in his 80s, and he's never done an interview before.
Okay.
And he says no to me. Says yes to my wife. So that was the first interview. Now there's a park there where he knows exactly where everything is when he walks the ground. He's that sharp.
Okay.
And so we got to interview him. Then we got to interview another guy who worked there for a while. And he had a bunch of memorabilia at I think it's the Monroe Historical Society. They had a room there where he had a collection. So we got to interview him. It's been a little dicey on the other people so far. We think we might have an end to some of the owners, but everybody's got those amazing just stories of the good times that they had. And I was like, I've been covering the hard stuff for a long time. Let's try to find something a little happier, a little bit easier for people to just relate to and watch. So we've got that ball rolling. We started it, I want to say in May, we started our first few interviews. So we're still working our way through it. We're hoping to get 8 to 16 people and put that together. So many people had videos and photos.
Really?
I mean, they were so excited to share all that stuff.
I'm sure it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Oh. So can I ask if you know this? Like, when did that close?
Either 2000 or 2002.
Really?
Wow.
So
I didn't know it went that long.
So there were fires.
Yeah.
One burned the like what they called the bathhouse, and that was before this guy became owner. And the last few ones, they hired people that were carnival people, not so much amusement park people. So things were fluctuating. It was hard to get good people in there. And the last guy to own it, he owned like an RV like they sold RVs and different things like that. So he wanted to keep it around, but to the best that I've heard from other people is, he just didn't have that type of business knowledge.
Okay.
So they started selling off a lot of the rides. Some of the rides we're able to track where they are. Like one of the rides is in New York State right now.
In service at a park?
Still in service.
That's great.
They had some animatronic stuff, and that is in different places. And some people have been tracking those things. And I said, I can't believe this, that people were really knew all that stuff. Yeah. They didn't keep any of the Screeching Eagle, but I was able to see the front of one of the cars that were on that. That's still around.
Is the park still there, or is it all torn down? And
the property was donated to the local government there, and they made a park there on top of it for kids, but you can still walk around and see parts of it, like the Sky Ride. Part of that is still there.
The Sky Ride? No way.
Yeah,
wow.
So we got to get some pictures and video of that.
Sure.
It was just like, wow, this is incredible. And we're hoping to get a lot more people involved because we want to get all the stories. And then the first guy we interviewed, he's kind of hoping it's a big success. I'm like, all right, we got to get a lot of views on it and everything. I said, now he's pushing me in the direction of another amusement park that is not currently in service.
Maybe Coney?
Yeah, that's kind of where this guy was trying to lead me. He said, look, I've got connections. I was like, we'll see what happens with this first one before I do that, because I've got my hands full with so many things already.
Sure. Yeah.
And I said, but there's so many people who still have fresh memories of Coney. That would be great to see that and to get in touch with
finish
people.
the Americana one first. That's it.
We're excited about that. I mean, I think it's going to have a big impact on a lot of people. Not just people who went, but people who, grew up in that era, and maybe they had an amusement park where they lived or whatever, and it's not there anymore. And then they can kind of relive that a little bit. It's great looking through some of these pictures, just all the excitement and the people's faces. Like there's this one lady, like every time she's eating, she's got the biggest smile. She's on the roller coaster and she's all lit up and everything. And you love seeing that stuff, and you want people to be able to, enjoy those things and leave with a really good feeling. I said, I want people to feel like, they just had a big hug from Americana by the time they're done.
Well, I can't wait for you to finish that, because I want to.
It's absolutely incredible. And Shane, this has been awesome. I really, I've been wanting to get a hold of you for a while, and just honestly, we kind of were talking about it, and I thought about it. I thought, man, now's the time to get a hold of you, because there's a lot of things, like I said, at Crossroads, and I think it was one time at church I was at Crossroads and something popped up, and that's when I thought, man, I need to get a hold of you. So again, just real quick to let everybody know where they can get your addiction series to watch that, or if they want to see the Americana stuff, updates, anything like that. Just so give everybody out there where they can catch some of your stuff.
They can find it on youtube.com/Shane8109, and there's also a Facebook page. This is the Addiction Series, and between those two, you'll be able to find the videos or find a way to one or the other. And those are the two places that it lives the most.
And then if they want to come watch you as a pastor, they can go where?
They can come to Franklin Chapel. We're at 2330 Franklin Laurel Road in New Richmond.
Wouldn't you just die if he and I shut up in the back?
I've had people come that were part of the Addiction Series. They wanted to come just
no kidding. That's something.
That was really cool.
That is incredible.
That really that was amazing.
That is incredible. So again, Shane gave you all the things, and then for us too, do the same thing. You can go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, like. We're on Apple, Spotify, all that. This will be on obviously YouTube, and then also be on all the social media networks, Twitter, Spotify, all that stuff. So like ours, share it with anybody, send it to anybody, especially this one. I mean, this is a big thing. And again, 100%. Anybody out there that is struggling and with an addiction, or they want to talk about it, or they need help, or whatever it is, contact Shane. He'd be more than willing to talk to you and help out and get your story shared out there and start to get that journey to get help. Yeah. So
let's get a title for this guy. Let's get a title.
We need to think about it. So here's our goal. Before we release this, we're going to come up with a name.
All right.
And that's what we're going to put in the name when we do this.
Okay.
And we're going to let him know and we'll make sure that he's okay with it. We don't want to give a real bad name or anything like that. But Shane, really, again, thanks a lot. We appreciate it so
so much.
Yes. Thank you, guys. I appreciate this.
It's pretty awesome. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for Steve Ellis, Dan Abbott, and Shane Reinert. You've been listening to the Positive Energy Podcast, positive stories about positive people. We'll catch you guys next week.